Hi there, and welcome back to the Energy Sector Heroes podcast. My name is Michelle Fraser, and every week I will speak with incredible people who share their lessons, experiences, and stories from their time spent in the energy sector. Hi there, and welcome back again to this week's episode. If you're new to the show, then please take a second to subscribe and even consider sharing the show with just one other person. This week I'm joined by Atul Raina. Atul is the Vice President at Rystad Energy, and he looks very young as well, I have to say that. So I'm excited to interview him to find out how he's become so successful so young. So Atul, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely, Michelle. First, thank you for having me. So, as you mentioned, I'm Atul Raina. I'm based out of India. I'm a petroleum engineer by education, and I've spent nearly a decade in the analysis side of the oil and gas industry. So, I've started off with, I'm not sure if you're aware, but one Derrick, it was back in 2016, 2015 as an analyst there, then moved up the ranks through that within that company, worked with for Equinor strategy team through an Indian consulting firm for another 3 years. So that's where I sort of moved out from petroleum, oil and gas to also work on projects on new energy, CCUS, hydrogen, climate change, and all those new and hot topics out there, right? And through that, then I've been also worked at some of bigger names like IHS Market, who's sort of the gold standard in oil and gas M&A, at least at that time through Herald. And then eventually I stumbled onto this opportunity at Rystad Energy, where I'm currently working as Vice President in Upstream Analysis and the product manager of our upstream M&A solution. Yeah.
So how did you get started off in the energy sector?
Oh, it's a bit of a funny story. So a lot of my cousins are engineers, right? So right after school, I did not want to become an engineer. So that was something I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to become an engineer, especially most of them are doing electronics and communications, electrical, and so on, right? So it's a big thing. Almost everyone is that kind of an engineer in India. So I knew I didn't want to do that. But then through a lot of exams and counselings, I stumbled onto petroleum engineering, and I thought it's okay. It's still engineering, but it's a bit different. It won't be as conventional as other branches, right? So that's how I started into petroleum, and then through my internships and through those 4 years of college, right? Uh, I, I I started liking it. It was not just textbook stuff that you were doing, right? You had to go in the field, you had to do internships, and through that, I eventually realized this is oil and gas is the place where I wanted to be. And through one of the internship, I realized that being on the side, it's pretty, it takes a toll on your body, right? Uh, so I knew I wanted to be in the industry, but not do those that physical labor, right? So I stumbled onto one of the first companies I started working at, one Derrick at that time, which is now Enverus. So they used to hold a competition in our college for a lot of fourth year students about to become graduates, right? So a lot of case studies, and through that you get a, they had this campaign called Day at Derrick, where you could go to the company for a day, see how it works, and it's essentially an interview, right? So that's how I landed my first job, and it's been going great since then. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds amazing actually. I have to ask you, you look very young. How have you become so successful so young? Because a vice president is
Hmm.
no is is amazing actually. It is an amazing it's amazing career path that you've taken. How did you get there?
Uh, it's a bit of luck and a lot of hard work as well. First of all, it's definitely good having the title of vice president, but there's still a lot more places to go, right? So, yeah, so it's a good position, but yes, there's a lot more to come. I think I've been lucky in some sense. So a lot, there's no one thing that sort of led to this, right? It's a lot of uh, critical calls throughout your first job, second job, third job. So essentially, it's all inorganic growth, right? So uh, that had taking the right call at the right time, and some of that also. can be attributed to luck or at the right opportunity coming at the right time when even I was ready to move or switch, right? So those kind of things work really in my favor. And I think just conventional hard work, right? So I strongly believe in hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, right? So that has been my motto, and that's really helped me a lot throughout my 10 years.
Okay. So you mentioned that there is many things that you still want to achieve in your career. What are those?
So, for example, I mean, yes, there's a corporate ladder within Rystad Energy as well, right? So even after VP, you have quite a few positions up there. So that's one. And then, as I mentioned, I'm based out of New Delhi, right? So it's not New Delhi, India. So it's not the hub of oil and gas activity, right? It's not the hub of M&A. So professionally, having that impact within let's say London, Houston, or Texas, that's where a lot of M&A happens, and that's where a lot of oil and gas deals happen. So now the next step would be to create an impact on in such places, meet clients there, go to a lot of meetings, and have a lot of interaction with people in the industry who are actually making these deals in person, right? Currently I do it remotely, but then being in flesh there is sort of the next goal now.
Okay. So how do you propose to get to your next goal then?
Again, Michelle, I'd like to say that it's again hard work, right? So if I just sit here at my desk doing my job, these contacts won't be established on their own. So there are a lot of cold approaches. We do a lot of analysis on the mergers and acquisition side of things. So putting that out on LinkedIn, taking it out to a lot of industry people, telling them, okay, this is the analysis we had, and then starting a conversation. So that conversation then becomes into a meeting, and then you club all of these meetings together, and then you have a bigger roadshow kind of thing, right? So that's the ultimate aim.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you enjoy most about your current role?
Oh, it's tremendous. I think so. If you want to put my role in a bracket, it would be more of a research analyst, right? So that's the path I've taken since I left. I graduated from college, and then research analyst, senior analyst, and so on and so forth. But the current role, it's pretty dynamic, right? So as a research analyst, what you'd think is, okay, you're looking at a lot of reports, consuming information, putting up an analysis, right? So, but that's not it at Rystad Energy. So we are a growing company, and the amount of exposure you have to the real world is immense, right? So just to give you a brief overview of what I do here at Rystad, and it sort of also uh, covers a lot of aspects, right? So there's research which is essential, but then I'm involved with product development. So get to I get to understand, I get to define the future of my product, right? What features do I get in? What is more commercial? What How are we faring with the competition? So that's one. Then you have to take these features out to the market. So you're marketing as well, right? Putting it up on LinkedIn, doing webinars, cold approaches, all of that. And then there are also commercial discussions, right? So you also have a flavor of business development kind of stuff, right? So you're meeting new people, pitching them this product. So it's a wholesome role right now, right? So that's one incredible thing about working at Rystad. Yeah.
Okay. So what keeps you motivated when times get tough?
So that's a tough one, but I think most of it boils down to, having done a graduation in petroleum engineering. I think that's where those formative 4 years I created a liking for oil and gas. And now when I work on stuff related to oil and gas or even energy per se, uh, it's I feel at home. So it's it's kind of a stress buster for me. So because I've been doing it for 10 years now, it's sort of my safe place. So I'm comfortable here. I can experiment a lot. And that's how I kind of stay motivated at work. Yeah.
Okay. So did you have mentors during your career? What was the most important thing that they taught you?
Oh, absolutely. I think I would not have been here without some great mentors, some great bosses, managers, and mentors, right? Given coming from a petroleum college, a lot of our seniors were also within this line, right? Within this analysis side, within other companies that I'd worked for. So they really helped me. So one key thing that they've been able to instill in me is hard work, right? So there is no replacement for that. So obviously, let's say when I was a fresher, when I joined One Derek back in 2016, uh, you don't know much about work, right? You don't know, you have your theories from oil and gas, but you don't know how to apply it in the corporate world, right? And that's that bridge, they helped me bridge that gap. And uh, they used to get us in office at really early hours, leave us at very late in the day. And then if you went to my mentors with a question, they will never give you the answer. They'll always push you to give the answer. They'll keep questioning you so that you eventually, within 5 minutes of that conversation, get an answer. So that's been one incredible learning for me, right? So no spoon feeding. You have to figure out things on your own because everything is out there. You just need to connect the dots. So they really uh, taught me how to connect those dots, and that's been uh, incredible. And that's been the key to success.
I do agree actually. Being able to figure
Mm.
out problems yourself and troubleshooting them yourself is key in
Yeah.
any job. So you were saying before that you think that your success has come down to a lot of luck. Do you really think that? There must
Not a lot of luck, but a fair bit of luck and then the right opportunities. For example, I'll sort of run you through one example. Is when I was working for Equinor, I was working on for 3 years. I was working on groundbreaking stuff. Right at that time, climate change and what majors were doing from a emission reduction angle, that was crazy, right? So they were just coming out with targets and everyone wanted to know what those targets are, how do they impact their future portfolios and all of those kind of stuff, and what's essentially going to happen in the industry, right? So we were working on that, and then I came across this opportunity at IHS to be a part of their M&A team, right? So what that meant was you leave this groundbreaking work and then go to a niche into mergers and acquisitions within oil and gas mergers and acquisitions, right? So you're leaving what is trending and going back to your basics, right? What I did 2, 3, 4 years back. So that was a tough call that I took. And then I joined IHS. And that eventually led me to this role at Rystad Energy. So that's where I think it was luck that I didn't know at the time of working at Equinor or working for Equinor that I'll be, becoming VP at Rystad Energy. But then that small step between these two jobs is where I say it was a bit of a luck. It was challenging, but yes, that's why I sort of give that credit to luck. So the calls I've taken, the decisions I've taken have been tough, but somehow they've turned out good in hindsight. Yeah.
okay. And that is really interesting. I was going to ask you, for a younger audience, being a vice president, they might not know what is involved. So can you maybe describe your typical day of what you do as a vice president?
Absolutely. So here at Rystad, when let's say you're at the vice president role, and there are a lot of more ladders there as well, you're essentially leading a product or leading a team, right? So what I lead here is the upstream mergers and acquisition solution that Rystad Energy has to offer. So uh, on a typical day for an M&A analyst here, uh, you have a lot of research kind of role where you're looking at what's happened recently in the industry, who's buying whom, and getting all of that information in your products. But then when you sort of go up the ladder and at a VP level, maybe now you're also looking at product development. So you have this information, but then how is it best showed on your product, right? How is it best showed on your platform? So that's where you start thinking, right? And that's where you got to see what's out there. You got to know, okay, it's not just deal value resources or 1P reserves that the people are looking at. For example, one of the groundbreaking stuff we did at Risa for M&A is we connected all of this upstream information around deals with emissions, right? So now in our products, Uh, you can see an upstream deal and you can see the emissions and the emission intensity of these assets. You can analyze how a company has started figuring out, or keeping has started keeping emission intensity as a pillar for their M&A strategy. So that's the kind of path you can take the product in, if at a VP role, right? And then obviously there's a lot of leading a lot of your younger colleagues out here, instilling a lot of this conventional hard work kind of mentality, right? So that's essentially uh, a big chunk of your day at Rystad Energy, but then also you're responsible for making your product commercial. So again, coming back to marketing, meeting a lot of new people, pitching your product. So it's a wholesome experience here.
Okay, so that sounds amazing. So, what is the most challenging part of your current job?
I think being a millennial, and it's a challenge for almost all, right? So we're sort of stuffed in between a generation who has moved out 15, 20, 25 years of experience, and then we're also working closely with our Gen Z colleagues, right, our younger colleagues. So I strongly believe with experience, you get tremendous wisdom, right? It's irreplaceable. So they have that lead, that is one. And when you look at your younger colleagues, uh, they are equipped with a lot more arsenal than we had, right? So we were just enthusiastic analysts who just wanted to learn. But now we're seeing enthusiastic analysts who know Power BI, SQL, Tableau, a lot of tech stuff as well, right? And that's a killer combination for an analyst. So having to tread that part between these two generations on both your sides, it keeps you on your toes, right? It keeps you challenge yourself on a daily basis. So you cannot become obsolete or become a dinosaur in the sense that you have no idea about what's SQL, what's Power BI, what's Tableau, right? You have to keep updating yourself there, and then obviously you have to work towards that wisdom that comes with experience. So I think that's one challenge that every millennial is sort of facing right now. That makes sense.
It does. How do you overcome that challenge then?
It's a lot of reading, right? I think you just can't stop reading. So it's not just about oil and gas or energy, but a lot of tech stuff also, right? You got to look at a lot of what's happening out there, right? So in terms of Power BI, the kind of dashboards that are out there. So you don't have to I believe I don't have to necessarily look at just oil and gas dashboards to be able to create one, right? I can look at any dashboard and get some inspiration, at least get to know those features, what's happening out there, and then try to see what I have, what all tools I have, and how I can, create something as exciting, as sophisticated. So a lot of reading for sure. So that's key here. And then you also have to be, on the ground doing a lot of the traditional stuff, which is for a research analyst, reading sort of becomes the most important part, right? The more you read, the more you're able to see uh, those insights or those trends. You're able to catch those earlier. And there's a saying there, right? the uh, the eyes cannot see what the mind does not know, right? So you got to keep learning, you got to keep uh, you got to be out there. So that's one key, that one aspect that's helped me a lot. Yeah.
I was going to say, because there is that perception that after you finish your degree at university,
Mm.
that you that you should be okay just to start a job and then learn on the job. But then, no matter what job you're doing or what level you're at, you're having to continuously learn all the time. Do you agree that?
Absolutely, absolutely. In specifically in India, the kind of the education system we had, I'm hoping it's changed a lot since I graduated. We knew a lot of tools that were out there, but we never got to work on real world cases, right? So we had a lot of theoretical knowledge, but most of it was not applicable for our jobs, right? For example, Excel. Uh, we were taught to use some if, some of all of the sum functions in Excel, but none of that works in corporate. You need to know VLOOKUPs and all of that, right? So that's something. It's I think that education system, it's more around, it helps you get a degree, but then to get a job, it's a whole different thing, right? And then to perform well in that job, it's a whole different story. So it might the education here prepares you to get into the job, but I think you need to do a lot more on your own to thrive in that job. So yeah.
So, okay. And that is a really
Mm,
good tips actually.
mm.
I really like that answer. In your opinion, as a young graduate, how would you prepare yourself to thrive in your new job?
If you're talking about, right after college into your first job, I think the key there is internships, right? And not some not generic theoretical internships where you're doing a project that no one really cares about, right? Not those kind of internships. You got to have 6 months, 2 months, 3 months of internships regularly throughout your 4 years, right? So you don't have to just wait for the last 6 months. So that's how it happens in India. So maybe there's one semester towards the end of your fourth year where you go to an internship, but it's mostly people don't learn much there, right? So first, obviously, it's up to the person or the student to learn themselves and gets those projects. But then you have to work on real world problems, and then you have to be in an office, right? So at least if not through projects, you at least learn by osmosis. So doing a lot of internships uh, is going to help you in your first job. And I think what will be more beneficial is if you know what kind of a first job you want, right? For example, I around second to so out of those 4 years of college, by second or third year, I knew that okay, now I want to be in the analysis side of the oil and gas industry. And then I was looking for I was participating in similar case studies and competitions to land a job in that sector, right? Uh, so now identifying what your first job would look like is the first step, right? So let's say if I want to be in the analysis side of the industry and I'm doing an internship in a drilling company where I'm on site, it does not really make much difference to my first job, right? It won't add value to my first job. So identifying where you want to go right after college and then sort of building up through projects, case studies, competitions, internships, and preparing yourself for that first job is, I think that's critical. So you got to start early.
So you were saying, and it was valuable of what you were saying. What you were saying before, it was really valuable and I really liked it. And
Mhm.
it was about not being stuck on projects or internships that no one really cared about. How as a graduate do you avoid that pitfall?
I was lucky again. I get to play that luck card here again. So the kind of college I was in, a lot of my seniors who had already passed out of college were doing stuff in analysis, right? So I, through my faculty, through my teachers, through my friends, I was able to, you know, identify these people, talk to these people. Okay, so how's it working at One Direct for you? So let's say one of my mentors had been working there for 5 years. Then I got to pick their brain. So there's a lot of alumni network out there, right, in your college. If you're sort of, for example, for me, it was there because we were one of the top colleges for petroleum engineering in India at the time. And then our alumni network was strong enough that you had people doing reservoir engineering, drilling engineering, analysis, and all those kind of stuff. So once you've decided what you wanted to do, you had a pool of mentors out there whom you had to reach out proactively, and then you got to pick their brain, right? So they used to come back to college for some competitions or some annual meets or alumni meets, and then you can, just uh, get yourself into one of those events, start talking to those people, and then really, really understand, okay, what is needed to at least start a job in that in the segment that you're interested in.
Excellent. That is really good advice. So I was going to ask you, if you were going to hire anybody, what qualities would you look for?
So we do a lot of hiring here at Rystad Energy, and I'll tell you one thing that it's tremendous, right? So as I mentioned before as well, at the time we were trying to get employed, at the time we were giving interviews, I think we had none of the technical skills that these new young graduates have, right? So they have technical projects, they have learned a lot of Python, SQL, Power BI, and that's tremendous. We never heard of these things in our college back then. So The most essential thing out there, I think, is also communication skills. So one, your technical aspect has to be good. And when we talk about technical aspect, we don't, for let's say if I'm hiring for an M&A analyst for my team, we don't expect them to know everything about M&A in that 1 hour interview, right? We expect them to at least know what's the projects they've done, right? So that's the kind of technicality you can get into in an interview, right? You can only talk about the projects that the candidate has done. So having a good hold of your technical projects, of whatever you've written in your resume is, I think that one thing is critical, and it is sort of supplemented by good communication skills. So if you've done something and you're not able to communicate that to the interviewee, it does not work that way. It's not a great thing to for an interview, right? So strong technical skills in the sense that you know what you've done in the projects. It's not a group 5, 10 people doing a project and you're just you've been a spectator or an audience there. You've actually done that work. You're able to handle questions on that. Maybe one thing that I do pretty often is, if I come across a project, it's sort of one standard question, or one favorite question that I have is how you can improvise this into a more real world problem, right? So having that ability to think outside of what you had done in your project, right? So, okay, if X is the problem, then I might tweak my existing system in a way that it addresses that problem. So having that flexibility, having that awareness is also very important. And all of this bundled up with the very good communication skills, I think that most of us are looking out there for. Yeah, make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. I think that's a
Yes.
yes. So I was going to ask you, what advice would you give to the students, graduates, younger engineers coming into the energy space?
I think you have to be very proactive, right? And don't wait for people to come to you. Instead, start attending conferences. A lot of student chapters out there in energy colleges, right? So go to alumni meetings where you have your alumni. Go to conferences. Attend a lot of technical events. Talk to a lot of people, and start building maybe more of a LinkedIn network, right from the get go. So instead of doing that once you're in office or once you've started your job, maybe you can have a head start from everyone else and start doing it from your last year of college or second last year of college, right? So get to talk to a lot of people in the industry. That way you'll also be able to understand and pick up bits and pieces, right? So maybe when I talk to a drilling engineer, I know, okay, this topic interests me, and maybe I want to investigate this more. Or maybe you see, okay, the shifts or the long shifts or the offshore nature of the work is something I might not like, and let me try find out, look at other options apart from drilling engineering and that kind of stuff, right? So you got to go out there, talk to a lot of people, attend a lot of conferences, attend a lot of events, and then sooner than later you'll know what you want to do and start working towards the first job that way.
I actually agree. Actually, I think a lot of graduates think that, oh, once I finish my degree, I'll then start maybe trying to get a job. But I think it has to start a long time before you're thinking about coming out in the last 6 months. So, what would your advice be to any graduate looking to stand out from anybody else?
As I mentioned before, I think first, the most easy way to stand out is good communication, right? So if you're able to put your thoughts in a structure, convey it in an interesting manner, that sort of that's half of the job already done, right? Because a lot of college students, at least in India, so having good communication skills is an advantage here in India, right? So at least I can speak for that audience. So good communication skills, yes, that gives you an advantage. And then this head start that we just talked about, right? Don't wait for the last few months. Start from the beginning, and then you have a lot more topics to discuss in your interview, right? So it's not just one way conversation going on in an interview. If you've already read a lot, if you've already attended a lot of conferences, and you've already met a lot of people, then you can have a lot better conversation in your interview. And converting that one-way dialogue in an interview into a conversation, I think that's where you win the game, right? So that's essential.
I agree, actually. I think that what you've what you
Mm.
touched on is very valuable, because I think the earlier that the graduates and students meet potential employers, the easier it's going to be for them to
Yeah.
build that communication and be able to hold a conversation with them, because it can be scary no matter what age you are. Interviews are quite hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And that also gives you the confidence, right? So the way I look at interviews, it's not just us trying to hire someone who's right for our company, but the company and the position and the role should also be suitable for the candidate, right? It should meet their personal goals, it should meet their financial goals. So all of that can only be done when you have a conversation instead of a one-way dialogue, right? So that's very essential, having that confidence, having those communication skills. So
I
it's
agree,
all
actually.
is up to that. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So I'm going to maybe ask you one final question.
absolutely.
If you could turn back time, right, what advice would you give to your younger self, even though you look young anyway?
Thanks for saying that, Michelle. You're very kind. Actually, uh, you've got me stuck on this one. But then, touch wood, it's all been going great. I think I was able to capitalize on a lot of those opportunities at the right time. And the most I would say go back in time and tell myself is that, okay, just be patient. So, no, I won't give everything away that, okay, this is when you get your next job or this is when you reach the VP position, but then just be patient and everything will work, right? So it's all about time. You just got to keep in working. That hard work will eventually pay off. There's no substitute to hard
And that is excellent advice as well.
work. Thanks,
So
Michelle.
I'm going to wrap up things now. So that's all the questions I have today. I would like to thank Atul for your time. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening, and see you next week. That brings us to the end of another episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, I'd like to gently encourage you to leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts and share the show with another person. You can also follow me on LinkedIn or via my website, www.michellefraserconsultancy.com. Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.